Arnold.
Okay, welcome to the Dean Arnold Podcast. It is June 22nd, and we're going to have a podcast today, and we're going to talk about my race for the school board in 2010. Yeah. I ran for the school board. And a little bit of a spoiler, I lost by 59 votes. That's 30 votes of people who would have voted for me instead of my opponent. So, good lesson. Always work hard. But anyway, I learned a lot out of that, and it was a good experience. So we're going to talk about it. I'm running for Congress, so it's a little bit bigger of an enchilada. But vote for me on November 3rd. Give to my campaign, DeanArnoldForCongress.com. And I'm bringing sanity to an insane world. I am. Please leave comments or questions on the live chat or otherwise, wherever you have a chance to comment on whatever platform you are on. Should be streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Share this podcast so others can see it. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever. And here we go. Okay. Let's do the scriptures and saying of the day first. Okay, I got to bring it up. Trying to be quicker on the trigger with this, but there you go. That is the gospel. Let's go to the epistle. We got something to try to deal with here today. Romans 9:18 through 33. Let's read the first couple of verses. Therefore, he has mercy on whom he wills, and whom he wills, he hardens. You will say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his will? But indeed, O man, who are you to reply against God? Will the thing formed say to the one who formed it, have you made me like this? Does not the potter have power over the clay from the same lump to make one vessel for honor, and another for dishonor? And it goes on. And Romans 9 is indeed I kind of switched it over for you. We'll do some switching over in a minute. Let me bring it up. Romans 9 is indeed a difficult passage. And so we're going to talk about it. It's this belief known as predestination, sometimes known as Calvinism, sometimes known as the Reformed faith, Reformed doctrines, Reformed truths. Basically believing that God predestines some to heaven and others to hell. So you don't really have a chance from the get-go. It's whether God predestined you or not. It's a strange belief, but it's very prominent in certain Protestant circles and in mostly in Presbyterianism, but it shows up in Lutheranism, somewhat in Anglicanism, a little bit in Baptists, but it's there. And it's fairly prevalent in part because it attracts really smart people, because it provides an academic kind of intellectual milieu for people to kind of swim in, because sharp young men need that. I'm Orthodox now, Eastern Orthodox. That'll certainly come up here in a minute. And that also provides a milieu for young men to be a little more intellectual and thoughtful. And so we've had a lot of Calvinists come into the Orthodox Church. But predestination, okay, crazy belief. Indeed it is. Now, is it biblical? That would be the question. And it's not an easy question to answer, I don't think. But we'll look at it. Now, my father was an ardent Calvinist, Presbyterian, predestinational kind of teacher. He did later in his life say he was Presbyterian with a small p and Calvinist with a small c, and basically a Christian with a large C. So good on him for that. But I was raised in a very strong Calvinistic predestinarian Christian tradition. It was hard. One of my jokes when I became Orthodox was the hardest thing about becoming Orthodox for me was getting rid of my Calvinism. And the best part about becoming Orthodox is I got to get rid of my Calvinism. So we'll talk about that. Now, I love my Protestant heritage, and that's a theme that I try to come up with again and again. I'm not one of these bashing people who are like, I'm Orthodox now, and the rest of y'all are going to hell, and none of y'all know God or anything like that. I don't believe that. I believe everyone should become Orthodox. I believe there's errant teachings that need to be corrected. But I just don't get rid of people in a fell swoop. Although the Calvinists do that. But I have a lot of appreciation for my background and my Christian heritage. I found Christ in a genuine, authentic way in that background. And I believe there's some good things. Let's talk about the good parts of Calvinism. Okay, Calvinists. Calvinists are soldiers. Calvinists are fighters. Calvinists are willing to stand for something that is difficult. Calvinists have this view of this is what the Bible says. Damn it, I'm going to believe it. I'm going to stand for it. I am not going to cower. And I don't care how awful or terrible of a thing it is or how much emotion you bring at me. I'm standing for the truth. And I like that because I think that's right. Now, I don't think predestination is correct. Double predestination. So I don't think you have to stand as a mighty soldier for a heinous belief. But I like the fact that you're standing for something. I really do. So that's a good part of Calvinism. Number two, they're jealous of wanting God to be in control of all. God's sovereignty is one of the catchwords. The sovereignty of God. God is completely in control of everything, and that includes your will and the decisions that you make and what you decide to do or not to do, and whether you're going to heaven or hell. God is in control of everything. There is nothing that he is not in control of. I like that sentiment. I think it's a little more mysterious than that. But hey, yeah, I think we need a lot more God is in control than God's sort of in control, but not really kind of people out there. So I like that part. I already mentioned that Calvinists tend to be a little more academic, a little more thoughtful. So that's helpful. Now let's talk about the bad. In refuting the doctrine, I would start with first of all, let's talk about election in terms of earlier in Romans 9. I think I'm going to have to bring this up on my screen. Sorry about this. Earlier in Romans 9, there is a famous passage. I need to get through this quicker than I have been. But right here, Romans 9, verse 10, not only that, but Rebekah's children were conceived at the same time as our father Isaac, yet before the twins were born, Jacob and Esau, or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose and election might stand, and not by works, but by him who calls, she was told, the older will serve the younger, just as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. Okay, and that's part of a long, long passage. And one of the twists you can put on this is to say that the election was about who was going to be the promised child, who was going to be the chosen nation, not who was going to heaven and who was going to hell, who was going to be damned for eternity, or who wasn't. And I think you can make somewhat a case for that. And I think the other refutation I would make about this is that we're not talking about, in these passages, vessels of wrath, vessels of destruction. We're not talking about ultimate eternal destiny. We're talking about God loving you right now and in history, rejecting you, whatever. And does that mean eternal destruction? Well, it might. We don't know. The Orthodox are very quick to say we don't know what happens to people's eternity and what happens to them in eternity. And so that might help a little, but probably not much. I think this is the key argument. There's 3 or 4 passages. This is the main one There's 3 or 4 passages in the Bible where you can look at it and say, doggone it, that sounds like predestination. That sounds like double predestination. God chooses some people for heaven and he chooses other people for hell. And that's just the way it is. And there's 3 or 4 passages where you can look at it and kind of shake your head and like, it does kind of look that way. Now, then we've also got all the rest of the Bible where God is saying, do the right thing. Do this. Don't do that. Follow me and I'll bless you. Disobey me and I'll curse you. And it is not predestination. It is free will, which if you get into these arguments, it's always predestination versus free will, God's sovereignty versus humans' free will. Most of the Bible's free will. Then you got 3 or 4 passages like, oh, okay, we're getting reminded that God is in control of all of this stuff. Maybe he saw it beforehand and that's why he chose, or maybe he actually did choose. And now we're trying to figure out if God is just and there's a mystery there. We don't really know. But the point I'm trying to make here for you is that there's just a handful of passages that talk that way. Most of the Bible is really enjoining your free will to do the right thing. And as Orthodox, we believe that God created his children in his image, and then through this curveball at himself, that he's going to let them make their own choices, even if they choose against him, and make his life a bit more miserable because he's got to spend now several thousand years coming as Jesus Christ and redeeming all the nations through a long game that's pretty crazy. But he allowed that because he wanted to create children who freely loved him, which all of us would want and do want. We want spouses and children to freely love us, not be forced to say they do. All right, I digress a bit. The ultimate reason that the Calvinists are wrong is they reject the historic teachings of the church. And there's all sorts of benefits to accepting the tradition of the church. One of them is you don't embrace a crazy doctrine of double predestination. But there's also lots of other good ones. I mean, in Calvinist circles, you're going to hear that innocent babies go to hell for eternity. Yeah, it's a toughie. Orthodox don't believe that. Well, if you become Orthodox, you don't have to believe that. What's another one? I made some lists. Probably didn't do a very good job. Oh, how about the teaching of alcohol? You know, kind of like you look at a passage, you say, oh, that's double predestination. Got to believe that. Well, not really. Other Christians will look at a Bible verse and say, oh, alcohol. Can't drink alcohol. Alcohol's sin. It's always bad. Well, that's a dumb teaching. That's a dumb idea. And the historic church has never believed that and has never practiced that. And if you were following in the line of the historic church, you wouldn't have to deal with all that nonsense. So, Calvin, I read Calvin's Institutes, had to read that in college, and I wouldn't recommend it, as a afternoon pleasure reading, but I did read it. It was okay. I mean, I don't hate Calvin, but although he hates some folks, but he quoted a lot of Augustine, who was a bit more into predestination, but he doesn't quote a lot of Chrysostom and doesn't quote a lot of St. Basil, St. Gregory, St. John of Damascus, St. Maximus the Confessor, who aren't going to go down the road of predestination. So he kind of cherry picked it. And, so since he wasn't in the tradition of the fathers and looking for a consensus on these matters, he got down a side road that has hurt a lot of people. So follow the tradition of the fathers, follow the tradition of the church, and don't get into weird side doctrines. Which kind of brings me to my last point, which is denominations themselves, in a large sense, probably are motivated, in my opinion, on the idea of a pet doctrine. You see, if you're a Protestant, you're like, here you are on one side of the street, and across the street is a Baptist, and down the street's the Methodists, and down the street here is the snake handling Pentecostals. And it's like, why do we exist? Why aren't we in unity with other Christians? Well, they don't really disagree on the major doctrines, which they ought to be majoring on: the Trinity, the two natures of Christ, forgiveness of sins through his atonement, et cetera, et cetera. They need to find something different that kind of sets them apart, which gives them a reason to exist. Raison d'etre, as they say in French. And so we got to have this pep doctrine. Well, we exist, and we have the legitimacy of needing to exist because we meet on the 6th day, not the 7th day, or the 7th day, not the 8th day, Seventh-day Adventists. Or we believe that infants should not be baptized, only adults. We believe that God sends some to heaven and some to hell, and there's nothing you can do about it. All these different pet doctrines allow Christians to sort of continue in their little church and not be in unity with the rest of the church. That's my opinion. Psychologically, that's what's going on. Okay. You ever heard of the 2 spiritual laws of Calvinism? Spiritual law number 1 is God hates you and has a terrible plan for your life. And the second spiritual law of Calvinism is there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Yeah, that's an old joke that I've been saying for a few years. Like I said, I love my Protestant heritage, and I love the Calvinists. They got a lot of good qualities, and there's going to be a faction of people that are going to not like what I've said here. Now, well, there's a lot of things that I say that people don't like, but this is one of them. You need to think about it. Back up a little bit and see if you can get a broader perspective. And God loves you. So let's move on now to the gospel of the day. It'll be a long podcast if I'm not careful. Bring this up. Yeah. Let's go here. The gospel of the day is, I'll try to be as quick as I can. John the Baptist, he hears about the works of Christ. He says to his disciples, ask him, are you the coming one, or do we look for another? And Jesus said to him, go and tell John the things which you see. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear, and the dead are raised up. And the poor have the gospel preached to him. No one should be offended because of me. Well, think about this. John the Baptist himself is wondering if Christ is the Messiah. And why? Well, because John the Baptist was preaching a fiery message, and he was the man. He confronted Herod because he was married to his sister, said, dude, you are in adultery. And that ultimately got his head cut off. But he was out there preaching and saying the axe is at the root of the tree, and I baptize with water, but the one coming after me is going to baptize with fire. Are you ready for the coming judgment? He was ready for a big day of reckoning to come. Well, that's not what happened with Christ. And so he's sitting around wondering. And you know what? He wasn't too far off from the rest of the Jews, who then and today are looking for a Messiah who's going to kick ass, who is going to be a military conquistador, and who is going to destroy all their enemies. And destroy, back then, they wanted Rome destroyed. And that's not what Christ did. Christ did a whole different thing. He came in with a whole different playbook, and nobody was ready for it, including John the Baptist. Now, John the Baptist, unlike the Pharisees, when he heard what Jesus had to say, he obviously embraced that because he was a man of God and he's in the kingdom. This message of love and mercy and compassion and healing and works of service unto death, as opposed to being a military conquistador. It's a very tough message. We struggle with it now. They struggled with it then. It's still the message, and we need to persevere unto the end with that message. And I pray that I can do that. I can be a military conquistador in my heart sometimes. I can be a Calvinist in my heart sometimes, but we got to move past it. Lord, give us the grace and mercy to do so. All right, let's move now to the saint of the day. And it's going to be St. Alban, the proto-martyr of Britain. So the first martyr of Britain, I like this one because, my roots are British and we need to be aware of these kind of things. But in about the mid-200s, St. Alban was hanging around in his house, and a Christian priest, was running from the governor, and they were trying to kill him. And he asked St. Alban if he could stay in his house. And he's like, sure. So then they found out that the authorities were coming to get this guy. So St. Alban switched clothes with Amphibolus, the priest. So the priest was able to get away. When they came to St. Alban's house, they saw he's dressed as a priest. So they arrested him and brought him to the governor. And St. Alban refused to, the governor was mad about all this, by the way. But St. Alban refused to offer sacrifices to the pagan gods. He says, I'm a Christian. I worship the true God. So he was beaten and tortured, threatened with execution. They took him to this creek where there was a bridge, and so many people came out to see the execution that nobody could get across the creek. So that it says that St. Alban prayed the sign of the cross over the river. The river's parted, so they're able to cross over to the other side. Sound a little bit fanciful? Well, maybe so, but we got a couple of places in the Bible where we believe that the waters were parted. So maybe they were parted 200 years after Bible times as well. And so he was executed, possibly as early as 2009. We don't know. And I'll leave it at that. But I will just say that there's one other saint that will come up on the calendar eventually, I think. Related to Britain, St. Aristobulus. He was part of the household of Caesar, but he was from Britain, and he went back to Britain, and he was one of the 70. So Jesus had 12 disciples. He also had 7 disciples, and one of them was this Brit named Aristobulus, who came back. I think he was like the first bishop of Britain. This is all first century stuff. So Britain has deep and early roots in the Christian faith, and that's all very cool. So we can be thankful for that. Okay. Moving on to the topic of the day, which is I ran for school board 16 years ago in 2010. I lost by 59 votes. But I ran a heck of a campaign, and I'm proud of the whole thing. I'm glad I did it. We knocked on all kind of doors. We sent out flyers. I did direct mail. I raised money. Let's see. I was endorsed by the Chattanooga Times. I had been a longtime conservative, outspoken critic of liberal policies and always at odds with the Times. And then I run for school board, and by cracky, the Chattanooga Times endorsed me. The Free Press didn't, the establishment conservative paper, but the Times endorsed me. And I'm also getting encouragement from far left people from my congressional race because I don't believe in genocide. Genocide is always wrong. And so people on the left are saying they're going to vote for me. How about that? So I got a couple of pictures that I think that I can show. Oh, can I bring it up? Oh, I think I got to do this. Stop the screen, share the screen, go to Windows. Okay, so there's the logo that I had for my school board race. And then how do I got a cute little picture of, I'll have to do this again. I apologize, but I think this is important. Here's my crew of folks who knocked on doors for me. That's me in the center back in the days with no beard. And my wife to my left, Dottie. And then a bunch of neighborhood friends and old friends who knocked on doors. John McGurk, the maestro of Belvoir neighborhood. Stephanie Shankles and her mother. Bob, who was 84 and he must have knocked on 1,000 doors for me. Fantastic. Anyway, those are good times. I'm glad I got to do it. So come election day, stats later showed that I had I was leading the voting on election day. And from 5 to 7, the heart of voting on election day, I lost early voting, but I was winning on election day. But from 5 to 7, when the most voters come in, there was a huge, unprecedented electrical storm and downpour of water, and all sorts of chaos happened. So nobody came and voted at that time. And if they had, I probably would have won the election. So I've considered an act of God that I did not win. So that's fine. But we came close. If I had of won, I wouldn't have written my book about Ethiopia, which is a very important book. I wouldn't have done my documentary called Harriet's Secret, which premiered at the IMAX, and it's a wonderful depiction of a lot of cool stuff historically. And I wouldn't have written my 3-volume commentary on Revelation, or been the editor of that project. So, all things work together for good. Last thing I want to say about this school board race. My opponent was a guy named David Testerman. He was an assistant principal. It was hard to win a school board race against an assistant principal, but he ran a good campaign. He stood out every day during early voting for 3 weeks, holding a sign saying, "I'm David Testerman, vote for me." And I think he probably won the election because of that. So good on him. But anyway, when you're running against somebody you don't like them, that's the enemy. And I did not, go further than, I didn't stomp on his head and be bitter. And I think I had a little diatribe a couple weeks ago, about loving your enemies, how that can be a wise thing. Don't burn your bridges when you're in a contest with someone, whether it's litigation or whatever kind of things you might find yourself in. You just never know when current enemies will become allies over time. Well, in the last few months to a year, David Testerman has been liking all my Facebook posts. So now he's an ally. He's a friend. He's a virtual friend, Facebook friend, but hey, it's all good. So another lesson there to never burn your bridges. I have run a political campaign in the past, and I'm running one now, and we'll see how it goes. But that was a tough race, and it was hard to lose by a slim margin, but it's okay. I will move forward. I am moving forward, and I guess it was predestined that I not win the school board race. Haha. Comments. YouTube.com watch. So somebody has sent us a YouTube thing to watch. It's probably a Proving Calvinism kind of YouTube. I have no idea what that is, but thank you for your contribution. No problem there. I'm running for Congress. Vote for me. Give to my campaign, DeanArnoldForCongress.com. Share and subscribe. I'm bringing sanity to an insane world. And it's all good. I think I need to bring up the music now, and we can call it a day. I think I've covered everything. Thank y'all.
Dean Arnold.